Hello, my beloveds. So beautiful to connect with you again today. I feel called to share a little bit about freedom and responsibility for our modern predicament. So, a lot of this conversation is going to be around fear and how that can be our medicine. You haven't been feeling any fears lately, have you? Yeah, it feels like our world is rampant with it. So, as we go into this conversation, I want to talk a little bit about our social conditioning and how basically humans on our earth are taught such strict and confining ways to engage with the world, where our freedom to become authentic is essentially stripped away. And we trade our freedom and our authenticity to feel like we have belonging and safety in a world that we often perceive as mysterious or confusing, confounding, and even frightening, at least at times. And so I feel like there's so much promise in the movement that we're seeing now around conscious parenting and homeschooling, where children are given more freedom and autonomy to explore who they really be in the world rather than just receiving a lot of programming. I think that is so powerful. But for most of us who are adults, we carry just so much subconscious programming that actually inhibit our expression of freedom. It's like we've traded away our freedom and our authenticity just for a sense of safety, to feel like we are, like we have some belonging in our society. And a lot of our programming is really around like fake freedoms that that misguide us into thinking that we're free, and so and really serve as distractions. So, for example, say we have a really hard day at work, we feel like all the pressure is looming on us. Maybe we felt like we were criticized, and then maybe we feel like, well, you know what? I think I'll just go out and party a little bit tonight, like let off some steam, relax a little bit, or numb out in some way. And that can actually exacerbate the problem, right? So it's a distraction from being able to create more empowered ways to address the real live problems that exist. And it may also, compromise our groundedness the next day when we have to show back up at work. And so it robs us of our freedom to create inspired solutions that would have enduring meaning for us. It keeps us from being free to choose empowerment rather than numbing out. So I feel like we tend to feel fear, and then instead of looking for creative solutions, we tend to look for ways to compromise our freedom so that we can have a superficial sense of safety. Hmm, not so healthy, right? So, what is fear? Fear is actually a really natural and normal emotion that supports us in surviving this world. And so, um, there's no reason to try and negotiate it away. We'll find other ways to channel medicine in that today. But our perceived notion of threats have evolved over time. So oftentimes when we're talking about like how our central nervous systems are wired and whatnot, we'll talk about an example of like when we were prehistoric beings and we encountered a saber-toothed tiger on the trail, then all the energy would go to our arms and legs so that we could fight or run really, really fast. And that is a completely natural and healthy response. We don't want to trade that away at all. But the world has evolved in such a way that, like, say we're eating our lunch at our desk, and all of a sudden we get an email that we perceive to be inconvenient or even hostile. And suddenly we feel sick in our stomachs, and we feel like all of a sudden there's this urge to like fight back or to like run out of the space and take the rest of the day off, or whatever. So they're like these natural responses, but the actual threat in that email was, could very well have been very minimal or really like sort of inconsequential, but we may have like a really harsh response to it to the email, just because of where we are in our consciousness at that moment. And so, like, fears are showing up in all kinds of ways that are not necessarily real threats. And so we may feel like, we may feel like we don't have a real sense of belonging. We may feel fears around loss or scarcity or failure or success or social status, or we may even be feeling senses of unworthiness sometimes because the world can seem so overwhelming. It's like, who are we to like navigate all the complexity of what's happening right now? So I'm seeing a lot of that. And more, with the state of the world as it is, like the prevalence of seeing the world as an innately hostile place is really expanding lately. And that is quite understandable. But all of these ways that we have fears that are showing up on a day-to-day basis through all of the things like relating and all of the different environments that we visit, fears can just be coming up left and right for us in our experience. And really, they're windows to perceive the shadows or the hidden aspects of ourselves that are kind of lurking around in our lives. And they can create conflict with other people. They can create physical health issues, mental and emotional health issues, and even spiritual crises, right? And so, in the extreme, they may actually manifest as a full existential crisis where we question even our right or our purpose for being in the world. And there's really there's no purpose in trying to transcend fear, like we can never feel it. That's not necessarily practical or healthy. But rather, in this video, we're going to explore ways that we can actually look at how we can relate to our fears in ways that may bring us more empowerment and a healthier balance. So, as we go through that, we're going to talk a little bit about our worldview. But first, let's bring a little bit of a shamanic lens into this. So, in our shamanic worldview, we have a lower world, a middle world, and an upper world. And the lower world is actually, in Christianity, it has been called like hell, or even in the ancient Greek and Roman, like the Hades kind of energy. But that was really became it like a distorted version of what is actually there. And the lower world is actually really beautiful. It's like a sacred garden where we connect deeply with the womb of the earth. And in that space, we can find like the secrets to the codes that come through our sleeping and our waking dreams. You know how our world is so full of, or our dream world is so full of symbolism, where everything and everyone we encounter is kind of a mirror for ourselves and can teach us more about who we really be as we explore those things. And yeah, and so yeah, one of the symbols that came up in my dream, I feel called to share, my beloved sun bear, my former dog, who passed away, about a year and a half ago. He came through one of my dreams the other night, and in the dream, he had stag antlers. So here's Sunbear. He's this like light cream colored dog, and almost like a white stag, but not quite. But then he had like these beautiful antlers, but then one of them was curled back all the way along on his back, like this really majestic stag that would be in the sacred woods. And so when I felt into that symbolism, I felt like his presence, his visitation, his support for me in my life. But I also felt that like that stag energy as being connected with Christ consciousness, which is one of the ways that the great white stag of the forest has been interpreted, but also is that rite of passage into elderhood, which I feel like he has absolutely achieved in his ascended state that I feel him to be in now. And I also feel like that's sort of a trajectory for me in my path as well, where I'm starting to feel more into my elderhood. And so that was a really beautiful visitation. So back to the lower world. So interpretation for our dreams, the symbolism that can occur there. We also can find lost aspects of our souls. And so we're going to talk a little bit about this, but oftentimes when we experience trauma in our childhood or in other lifetimes, we may negotiate away our power and our freedom in order to feel safe. So one example I often give is like, so imagine this is one from my own life too. One time my mom left me with somebody to watch me who was a very close friend of hers. And I knew her, but I was not necessarily comfortable with her, not because she was a bad person at all, but because, oh man, but because she was more of a like a kind of a hard edge kind of person. And so, in the process of being at her house and my mom leaving me, I felt like my mom was angry when she left. Maybe it was an unscheduled kind of needing to be away from the home or whatever. And so she had to, find place for me at the last minute. But anyway, she sent me off to this place and this house, and I'd never been there alone before. And I was just really scared. And so I ended up sitting underneath the kitchen table with their great big old bloodhound that they had named Nugget. And so I curled up with Nugget and just wanted Nugget, even though I knew Nugget was a boy, I wanted Nugget to be my mom for that time that I was at the house so that I could feel safe. And I made it like an agreement in that moment, like if my mom, I wasn't sure if she was ever going to come back for me. I didn't know what my life was going to look like. And I just wanted to tell God, I promise I will always be a good girl as long as you let my mom come back to me and let her love me again. And forgive me for whatever it is I did wrong that she wanted to leave me today. And so you can see where like trading off my power that way, it was a way of trading my freedom to be myself in order to be a good girl instead. And in doing so, it made it really limited for my ways to respond to conflict or trauma or drama in my life because I was always looking to safety rather than how to be true to myself. Does that make sense? So that's how soul loss can happen, and it can happen in really extreme cases like, being burned at the stake or going through a divorce or getting terminated from a job or things like that where we only see the discomfort and the fear, and so we trade off ways of being in the world so that we don't have to experience those things again. And that's not necessarily the best way to go. Not necessarily. So we have those pieces in the lower world, but they're all like it's like navigating the world of shadows, which is like the world of our fears. And so our fears all live down there, and our ways of coping with those fears, the awareness of that can also live down there. And so it's a really important place to look. So yeah. So we have that's the lower world. We also have the middle world, which is, kind of the reality that we live in right now. And so we have like this 3D perceptual reality that we all share, our consensus reality, if you will. And in the middle world, we may also awaken to perceive kind of what we think of as mythological, which may actually be like the invisible non 3D realm that overlays with us. So a lot of people have access to the energies of unicorns or dragons or the fae folk or fairies, as they're called. Things like that can also be parts of our middle world, but that aren't necessarily visible to all people based on our level of consciousness. And the middle world is also like a playground for our co-creation and for expressing our evolution, which we're going to talk a little bit more about in a minute. But it's really like our consensus reality is constantly shifting, and we have some autonomy and freedom for shaping that consciously. But how do we do that, right? So we also have the upper world, which in Christianity has been called heaven, And that is really a place of divinity, of our super consciousness. We have an aspect of ourselves that is also connected to the upper world, where we have like a spirit self that is completely connected to divinity, to like the source, to oneness, to unity. And that we, as we grow and unearth more and more of what exists of us in that lower world, as we become more and more self-aware, we have more access to that divine upper world, which is a very empowering tool to have in times like these. Mhm. So, our most authentic creations and lives come from integrating the worlds within us. All of the aspects of the lower world and all of our aspects of the upper world. And by having all of that become embodied and aware within our consciousness, we have much more access to our own sacred paths, or what we would consider to be destiny or dharma, which is also great. So then we have our shamanic worldview then to kind of carry into our awareness of what in the world is happening on planet Earth right now? And what is freedom within the context of that? So let's explore. To express this, I'm gonna share an analogy with you that came up for me when I was 8 years old. And when I've talked about this sometimes, but when I was 8 years old, I had a near death experience. And after that experience, I had an awakening of sorts, which I later put to sleep in part. But that awakening was really, really profound and made it really uncomfortable for me to navigate the world in any authentic way. But some really beautiful gifts came through with that, including awareness of my past lives and the nature of reality. So we were exploring in school, third grade, we were exploring manifest destiny. And our teachers were describing that to us in that kind of a grandiose way that expresses the pioneering spirit of humanity, and how we wanted to go into the unknown, unexplored places, which of course were already known and explored by other people. And we know that like the whole vision of what is manifest destiny and that glory was actually really predatory and created a lot of harm for the environment and also for the people, the indigenous people who were already on Earth, and even for the pioneers themselves, because as they began to establish themselves in this new terrain, they also had the like the onslaught of civilization, which created all of the same conditions that they had before they came to this country, and they ended up living in the civilization that they had once tried to escape. So that wasn't all that useful. But I want you to feel into the metaphor of this when it comes to freedom. So if you want to think of freedom, you could think of like the wild lush forest or the wild wild jungle, and imagine that you are the first and the only person to ever be walking into that space. And just let yourself pause for a moment and hear the sounds. And then open up your other senses. What do you see? What do you feel? And imagine you're barefoot and you're feeling all of the little serpents scurrying about your feet. And you look up to a majestic tree and a tree branch looming over you. And there you see a cougar or a jaguar watching you. And now you're eye to eye, face to face. And feel the sensations in your body as you feel the serpents and feel the other predators of the forest or the jungle. Feel your nervous system as you face this as an unknown, as a mystery. Now, the wisdom of the indigenous cultures teach us about how to live in harmony with both the threat and the beauty of that magical environment through spiritual practices and through an innate sense of connection to spirit. The indigenous people know how to navigate the natural world, to live in balance and harmony with the natural world, so that they don't have to be prey and they don't have to be a predator. And that is such a powerful knowing. But most of humanity has chosen a completely different path. In short, we've paved paradise and put up the parking lot, right? And that really came in order to avoid responsibility that the freedom of the wilderness would demand from us. And so we've traded our own freedom so that we could live in a disharmonious way in our environments, if that makes sense. And in the process, we have co-created a completely different kind of threat. And that threat evolved into ourselves and one another. Not so convenient, is it? So, and as a trade-off, we have social codes, very strict social codes and laws, like we were talking about with our conditioning, that are meant to tame the jungle of our lives and to create the illusion of safety. But do they work? Do they actually protect people and all the others with whom we share this land? I would say we have abundant evidence to the contrary. So we have poverty, we have marginalized people, we have harm to the environment, and we even have tragic crimes that create harm or loss of life. And then, of course, we also have the largely unseen but increasingly obvious crimes that are created behind the scenes of our society. All of the blackmail, all of the bribery, all of the backroom deals that are being made that are creating wars and global conflict. There's a big part of that too. Talk about the shadows. And so I feel like even the perpetrators of these large-scale atrocities are responding to their own fears of freedom as well, to their scarcity and their loss of control. They are aware, too, on some level, that their ways of operating are so out of harmony and alignment that their very lives are incongruent and unsustainable. They fear the loss of their privilege and of their opulence, and they fear their freedom to lose their rule and domination in this world. And at the same time, they fear their freedom to choose a completely different path, one that honors the sanctity of all life and not just their own. Imagine the courage it would take for them to pick a different path. It's really profound. So we all signed up for this highly complex drama and matrix of evolution on Earth. And the drama is really real. It's really profound. It's even terrifying at times, especially for those with high ideals and giving natures. So we're being stretched to capacity right now to make meaning of the expanding affronts to human rights and to human dignity, even when we're not directly impacted. Those of us with the most empathic hearts are feeling tortured at times. And as more and more of us face our fears, we awaken. And then the need for laws and rigid social constructs become obsolete. Once people learn to live in harmony from within, beyond our fears, beyond our fears controlling our behaviors, then the potential for peace in the world expands. But we can't skip to the end. So I often see people who want to do that. They want to jump right into deregulation of corporations or of environmental protections because, like, we're evolved enough, we don't need that anymore. I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we are at all. We have so much corporate greed that is driving the overall picture of our planet, of what is happening on our planet, and no one is safe from that. Not our environment, not our people, nobody, not our earth. And so until the puppet masters come into, or the powers that were, come into harmony and balance within themselves, they pose an existential threat. And that is something that we need to consider. And so as each one of us embrace this work, we do contribute to the whole, but I want to give you a little bit of the map that may help you on your own to navigate this complexity. What can we do? And what we can do is we can go into the lower world. We can go in and really excavate and embrace, face our fears. And as we fully face them, we evolve out of our need to control everyone and everything. And we take responsibility for ourselves, for our own actions, for the way that we show up in the world. Responsibility and freedom go hand in hand. They have to go together. And we have to take responsibility for ourselves no matter how the world is showing up, no matter how tragic, no matter how hard. So facing our fears through the avenue of shadow work expands our self-awareness. It helps us to see the deep soul aspects that are buried within our subconscious. And in order to become whole, we have to unearth all those parts of ourselves that we discarded, as we mentioned in soul retrieval discussion, that we discarded in order to feel safe. And yeah, all those parts of ourselves that we bartered away have left us feeling less than whole, and have left holes that create vulnerability through our fears instead of strength and empowerment. So what are we going to do with that? And just know that the processes that I'm going to give you is going to help you to do your own healing, but also to support the healing of the future generations to come, because it shifts the reality in which we're all experiencing the growth process here on Earth. And because time and space are subjective, in that they are constructs of our mind and our reality that are not really, really true. We also have the power to affect the past, which further enhances the future trajectories that we have. And this is kind of the essence of shamanic work, but we have to start where we are. And so the first thing is we feel a fear, okay? We feel a fear. That happens all the time. It's natural. So what we can do is we can dive deeply into the fears that come up when they come up, and rest into all those emotions that come up when they are here. We can breathe and integrate, really slow down and allow it to move through our bodies, and tend to our nervous systems as we do so. And this is really essential because we don't want to create any trapped energies any more than we already have, where fear is living in our body. And so, and this process can even help you to lift away those that are trapped already and still living in your body. And that's really important. So breathe and feel the fears when they come up. After we feel the feelings and we feel more regulated, the second step is to assess our fears mentally. So notice which ones belong to the present moment and which ones may be projections into the future that aren't actually here now. And if they are from this time, if there is something that is actually facing us, the first thing we need to do beyond anything else is get ourselves to safety. And so there's no bypassing that movement. We need to find safety right away if there's an actual threat that we're facing down. And then to ever extent possible, get safe. And then from there, then we want to reclaim our empowerment. So we may want to ask ourselves, like, going forward, what support do I need? Where can I turn for support? How may we create an even more ideal response to this that may actually serve the totality of our life? Because ultimately, like, everything in our experience is here to serve us, is what I feel. But also acknowledge the inherent gifts that we have, our ingenuity, our creativity, our capacity to form connections and to ask for help. We have inherent gifts within us that will help us to rise into any challenge that we face in order to create a better outcome for ourselves. And this is the time to do that. So, number 3, for fears that may be projections into our imagined or probable future, we may want to first acknowledge that we may not be reading the future correctly. I see so many projections right now that are like alarming, really alarming. And some of those really, are important to pay heed to, absolutely. And we also may be empowered by knowing that the timelines are not set, that each of us make individual choices that affect the timelines, and we have collective choices that affect the timelines. And so being aware can help us to honor that we don't know everything that's going to happen, but also to be able to make empowered choices that will help us to step into any unknowns in a more empowered way. So, what are some very real practical steps that we can take to prevent the most atrocious outcomes and also to step into more empowered outcomes as we go? And all of the inquiries around what we need, who we can ask for support, what resources we already have, those are really important to ask at this time too, so that we can find the most empowered way forward. So, number 4, and this comes back to the wounds of the past, trace those echoes of the wounds, of the fears, of, all of those repeated patterns that come up through our lives, especially those ones that come around again and again, like abandonment or betrayal can be really big ones. And whenever we keep experiencing those patterns over and over again, they're inconvenient for sure, but they're also a prompt to always go into deeper healing. Every time we encounter a fear that is deeply embedded in our body, in our energy body, it will have magnified effects in our nervous system. And that is a prompt for us to go into a deeper healing journey. So, again, feel the feelings. And then after we regulate a little bit, then maybe take it to the mental and think about what kind of resources that we may need. And ultimately, if it's a repeated pattern, we may want to find somebody who can help us with the deeper healing, somebody that we really trust to share our soul and our vulnerability with, that can help us to navigate those prompts from spirit, that we need to go deeper into our subconscious and to really excavate those fears and help clear them once and for all, so that they don't have to live in our body and our energy body anymore. So, number 5, this one can be really hard. Even harder than going into the subconscious sometimes, but it's often helpful to remember to just lighten up and take ourselves and our world a little less personally and a little less seriously at times, at least to give ourselves a break. So our lives feel very, very important, but in another way, we're only here for a limited time on Earth. At least in this physical form, we are so much more on the soul level, on the spirit level, than we are in this one particular incarnation on Earth. And sometimes when we kind of pan out and we see the bigger picture, and then we remember that we're star seeds, or that we're eternal spirits that are having this ultimate adventure through the cosmos. And then with that eagle view, it's a little easier to come into a little space of neutrality, which can be really helpful in finding our way to freedom. And even when things feel really, really tragic and hopeless, there's a really beautiful way that beauty and connection and heartfulness can come through at those times, like in community disasters where people come in and they pitch in and they help one another. They get to know their neighbors on whole new levels than they ever knew before. And those moments of beauty and connection are always available to us, no matter what is happening in our external world. We can create our own little bubble of reality that can hold a lot of beauty in it. And that's a very, very freedom-oriented and empowered way to navigate our awareness of who we are in the world. So, and this is going to sound paradoxical to the last one, but conversely, we may also find courage in exploring our responses to the feelings of responsibility and commitment that we have in the world. We do have a sense of, oftentimes, like we would do anything for our families or our communities to really tend to those that we care about most in the world. And when we feel into that sense of responsibility, we will often tap into a sense of passion and purpose that take us way beyond our egos, way beyond our fears, and into the realm of like our destiny, our dreams, our passions, like what we want to bring forth most in the world. And like, when I feel that sense of like, I would do anything for this person, I would do anything to take care of my kids, my pets, and it's like, it gives us a whole completely different frame of reality from which to work from, where a lot of those other distractions in the world just don't seem all that important anymore. And so the last one is going to be to meditate on all of the ways that we embody true freedom, where we express our sacred gifts in the world, and where we feel called to communication or activism, like to be more authentic in the world, to let our light shine brighter in the world, so that we can feel like we're really aligned with our spirit selves and our own divinity in the world. And there's so much of that we're expressing already, and there's a part of that will be calling us forth into even grander expressions. And this is a place where, instead of fearing not belonging or being abandoned or betrayed, this is a place where we tap into so much of our soul and spirit essence that we don't really care what people think about us. We don't care how our opinion is perceived or what consequences may come from that. Cancel us, well, whatever. It doesn't really matter. Like, I'm still here. I'm still showing up. I'm still letting my voice ring out into the world. I'm still shining my light. I'm still holding the lantern and sharing my heart and my journey that I've gone through in this world and the things that I've learned for whomever may feel the call to resonate. It doesn't have to be for everyone, but here I am, being true to myself, being true to my soul and my spirit, being true to the reason I feel I was being put here on the earth. And that matters more to me than anyone's opinion or any consequences that may befall that. So, wherever we are on our path, wherever we are, we may have just incredible amount of fears that we're feeling right now. We may trace them back to one big one, or maybe we don't even know what we feel right now. But the way will be shown for us, and we can just start where we are. And there are phases and stages that we go through. There are ups and downs, there's expansion and contraction, there's uncertainty and there's clarity. And we'll be dancing around in all of the realms, round and round and round. It's not really linear. It's all over the place. Trust me, I know. But the deeper we go into our soul essence, into our subconscious, into that deep, rich, lower world that holds all of the complexity of our unique human condition, the more that we become self-aware of all those aspects, the more that we have access to our absolute divinity, our super consciousness, that like supernatural aspect of ourselves that is all knowing, all wise, connected to the infinite realm of wisdom that is truly available to all of us. And that's often revealed through spiritual journeys, through meditation, through ceremonies of all different kinds. So we have some really beautiful tools that we can use to access that realm as well. And the journey of wholeness is really to embody and integrate all of those aspects of that deep lower world and that vast upper world, and bring that all to home into our hearts, so that we are inspired to live that beauty of our wholeness. And the more that we each expand our light and bring all of that home to our hearts, then the more prevalent and accessible that becomes for everyone else on earth. It's the less we're casting a shadow and the more light that we're carrying, the more that other people are able to see their shadows and to see their light, and to bring it all home inside of themselves too, and to be more empowered, to feel their freedom, to be more authentic, and to take more responsibility for how we show up in the world. And the more that happens, the more peace there is on the earth, the more harmony, the more love, the more unity consciousness. And that truly is the essence of how we're evolving here on earth. As messy as it is right now, it needs to be messy. But also, like, how beautiful it is, the light that is not only coming forth from the stars and from the sun and upgrading us with all these solar flares and all this magnetism, but there's also like these beautiful frequencies from within our hearts that are shifting consciousness on earth, just like little by little by little. But that awakening is exponential. It's growing, it's gaining momentum, it's taking over. Yay. And speaking of taking over, I had this thought to share with you too. So take it for whatever it's worth for you, as with everything I share. But there's been a lot of talk about AI, artificial intelligence, and how it is gaining knowledge. It's gaining knowledge so quickly, like breath by breath, day by day. It is expanding and expanding, and there are some real interesting things to contemplate around that, right? Like how much of that will be used for good, how much of that will be used for ill. What is that going to mean for our world and how it's shifting? And the one thing that artificial intelligence doesn't have is wisdom. And wisdom comes from the very process that I'm sharing with you today, of accessing our soul, of accessing our spirit, of becoming so highly self-aware, so empowered, so full of freedom and integrity, so full of empowerment, of just all the beauty of our souls, and being willing to shine that out into the world. That's the wisdom that humanity is expanding, even as AI is expanding. And the wisdom is so much more powerful than the knowledge. The knowledge is great, but the humanity and the wisdom that we carry is so much more powerful. It's infinite. It's infinite. It's divine. So my prayer for you, beloveds, is that whatever these words conjure for you, whether you resonate or not, that you feel empowered to embrace your journey on deeper levels, to feel into your fears and also feel into your divinity, to allow all of those to come home to your heart without judgment, without resistance, to just let yourself feel the feelings and embody the journey Embody the integration that is waiting to happen for you at even deeper levels. And just know that you really can't get it wrong. Your soul and your spirit are guiding you every step of the way. And that is true for all of us. We're all doing the best with whatever we have and wherever we are in our journey in this moment. And all of us are on a unique growth path. And together, as we come together, as we share our worldview, as we share what we're experiencing, what we're learning, our consciousness and our wisdom are expanding on planet Earth. And I really want to hear your voice too, to know how you're learning, how you're growing, how you're sharing yourselves, how you're loving. And together, I know that we're really making a difference. And I'm so honored to be exploring this in the web of one, of all that is. No matter what befalls this chaotic world that we're experiencing, we have the power to make really positive choices and changes that affect the whole and that change the trajectory of life on planet Earth. And just know that you are that powerful. And each day you can set your sights on doing one thing that will heal yourself, that will empower yourself, that will bring you more freedom. And that changes everything for everyone. That's how powerful you are. That's how powerful we all are. I love you so much with all my heart. Please feel free to share all the ways that this lands in the comments or to reach out to me. I love you so infinitely.